HR.
Seen everybody but Ferguson.
I was also checking to see if I needed to chase anyone out like you.
Yeah.
What?
Never mind, I'll tell you. You're good.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. Like you got the thing on that book. I see the top. Cool.
I have that and I do. I guess I maybe should do two.
Yeah,
I did
can
that.
you send it to Harrison Lucas?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah.
Do you have their emails?
Yeah, yeah, I do.
Perfect.
It's obviously displayed.
Good luck, have fun. Fun. Thank you. Yes, I'm about to say disease.
Dude, if the one you see on paper.
Look.
Thank you.
Have fun. All I say is this is street. It's street.
Just sign it.
Yeah. One piece of flip paper.
I actually don't know that. These are all used. And I'm like, which ones can I reuse?
Maybe let us know.
Dude, I actually, so I have like 4.
Oh, I have some paper. I'm gonna fill this.
Thank you.
I'm gonna fill this one out. It's not a ton.
I need one.
Oh, well, just take a stack.
I need the rest.
Whatever, whatever you're saying. I want it.
Thanks.
You're good?
I did not pick it up.
No, like, watch that. Watch that. I'm like, oh, it's so good.
I mean, like, they'd be happy for me to take it because then they don't carry it around. John, you have like a round where you can send the folder.
And John, I emailed you my next. That's.
Hey, Ned, where's that card? Oh.
It's saved in what's the file? ATX. Good luck, y'all. Can we get her?
Oh, this one.
I think he's just using the restroom.
I know. Just every time I think I've got a full room, I'm wrong.
Sorry.
marking this as started, so I'm counting on you. Don't do me wrong.
It's a lot of responsibility. I see you sent a little bit ago. Okay, are you both good?
Yeah.
Judges? Contention 1 is warming, it causes extinction, spanning above 25. We are leaving the alpha of civilization. Everywhere spiral limits are 26 degrees. Everyone will die. That aim is identified below 7 heating Trina. Sink into source, same Russian forest, a block of next effects are still underestimated. Initially increase in 2020 drought. As well as heat double harvest or visible tipping points are cascade restoration of ecosystem periods. Impossible growth through negative adaptation, credit emissions, betting in for arms of disaster situation, health systems. Collapse due to heat with them through the society, funding grounds, investing availability, short work, smoking, work, investments, by increase of uptake, cross transforming, similar to Alaska, innovating swaps, while terrain temps of 50 degrees for common human life is only possible. Farming glaciers, putting water, turbulent, sea levels rising, cell penetrates, horizontal rivers, putting world rivers, oceans, acidic, affecting entire food shells, stations, collapse, new pathogens, emerge, loss of pollinators, reduces food geoengineering, critical complex spiral. It's only possible threat of nuclear escalation is growing. It's never too late to prevent, but near-term emissions reductions have increasing value for preventing self-perpetuating warming. Sprat 24, climate reaching 2 points centuries faster than the past, no longer the future. Risks are expected and threaten society. 2024, late 6, collapses or no carbon collapse. 85% of current would happen in the decade, so flip the seasons. The world could dry out emissions that peak fuel students, rural power being obvious, how it declinably slow, but altitude warming, majority of scientists expect will reach more than 3 degrees and 82% of expect time to stopping feedback, so feedback, so figure of no return, how to see what's like, capacity stop warming, and existential threat could exist at 1.5 degrees. It's anthropogenic, underestimated, and fast, Sentinel 24, referring really to kinetic plate temperature, could be permanent, just around the being understated, focusing on likely low subset of false security. There's a high relativity factor being supported uptake by oceans reaching saturation is not clear. Ocean can destroy cloud sensitivity and may capture heat, lots of ice, food, albedo, absorber, entry, disintegrous, and the warming perception of the mind, all such method being reduced, efficiency, destination, and surprises not linear, impacts on our NPCC, estimates, even increases, GGs lead to committed warming, lead across stupid points, only low emissions, avoid reaching critical temperatures, acidification-induced food shortages cause extinction, crib 23, conflict originating food shortages, dwindling fish, accident, perhaps also nuclear conflict, even limited conflict, kill 2 billion nuclear winter across efforts to prepare for the war, 7 nuclear arms, and hot warming falls into the hands of warlords. Every bit of mitigation matters. Renewables are inevitable now, but too slow to prevent warming. Hold us 24, search and renewable, thinking of risks, slowing down, trauma, the witness, or the cheapest spaces we secure, clean. In the future, only question how fast the renewable revenue is inevitable. Focus to be making sure this happens as quickly as possible. There's no time to waste. The year is the hottest in history, and there's evidence people are arriving. Data showed not only the force absorbed the carbon wetlands are emitting literally every panel turbine matters. Now more than ever, contention 2 is innovation. China's on the cusp of blocking and market dominance, and the inevitable renewable transition. U.S. innovation policies key to leapfrog Chinese supply. Allen 25, solar wind energy committed 2045 battery storages of energy costs through geothermal following nuclear renaissance even cheaper thanks to Chinese new charges invested in fossil remains stagnant virgin markets to be good hydrocarbon demand or testilizing clean energy every 4 hours or prevent flush out LNG short lived demand persist clean tech is too big. US Canada see leadership tech to China simply onshoring. This is point US cities innovation first policy there is still mass behind US firms are currently onshoring innovating breakthroughs tech that put the country back in the race. US capital kind of bring touches on the market. Is there definition of the US needs to turn policy around trying to catch up and curb taxes to solar focus on action tech dominance and ideas establishing fogging tail circumvent a lot of risk advantage unity China's graphics and steel bolstering R&D financing being to address where you pass the scale and importantly will entail demand pull policies to accelerate commercialization. China will corner the European green energy market now 30-25. The EU is trying to block clean tech to e-commerce markets. EU is concerned about China blocking industrial policy to address the issue industrial policy needs to reduce use and lines could add version Beijing of little debate about a refensive market which from climate action seems unlikely as energy is driven by economic stack gives China a foothold in European grid planning. Competing with Chinese tech is key to give allies another option. Tips 24. Gap in tech between US and China versus security relations. China luxury penetration of order. China could lock in, become provider of choice, increase dependency for key clean energy. Usually reduce the gap. This would address security risks of Chinese GI through options, investment in storage, and compete against China. In this, the US can minimize security risks of their allies' grids not depending on China. US renewables can recapture the market, but require more and better innovation. Otherwise, Chinese dependence will fracture the EU. March 21. Electricity is strategic for the unit. Demonstrated connection of Chinese European grids and GI acquisitions grant. Voting rights of Chinese companies grid structuring involved energy member states ideal enterprise of of China's renewable achievements for nature plan the reliant. The winner hosts and minister hope for offers American investors limited with the Chinese convincing and the countries of different approach to our average GI proportion of China's success. The gap between vigilance, electricity infrastructure, central cross-border velocities, energy solidarity, strength of European governments, facilities of the EU, crucial points foster protecting against state groups of China. Strong EU stops inter-European conflict from inevitable series of influence. Gives nuclear peace in 25 most important. Achieving the EU is peace. Now the future doesn't give with its views of vigilance into intensifying arms races, ending conflict. This time nuclear competition comes not easy, but EU for all its problems managed by creating institutions that ought to be vilified. Use of data sharing down use norms. EU is miraculous and checks other risks. Part 19. We will harness environmental unless we grant common solution to energy, water, makes pollution, tax, inequality, migration without organization will be impossible. Trump threat. European trade rules and the research the use committed will shall not European cornerstone EU. Better equipped to face conflict epidemics, etc. EU manufacturing squabbles which other after key will shall not on track. The United States federal government should adopt a consistently rising carbon price and border adjustment of approximately $40 and support a competitive portfolio of low carbon technologies. Contention 3 is solvency. The plan's key 1 carbon pricing. It is necessary for the success of any mitigation policy. Bulls 21. The US needs to tax carbon tax to discourage firms doing carbon affordable tax increase for your office incentives drafted emissions in the necessary future. Is border adjustment tax competitiveness and legal this unfree emissions cost approximately advance leadership which is in key to the Chinese taxes on all subsidies R&D targeted incentives will be necessary without risk about effectively insufficient. Only pricing shifts consumption consistently penalizes all carbon sources and backstops emissions reductions from green R&D. Lecture 21. Carbon risk will encourage consumer choices with supplement sending incentives. Industrial sector is the first difficult to address the precedent effect all emissions around long-term incentives to carbon is industrial. In buildings and price schedules increase the duty impacts the continue given spending. Can't settle with leaving tools and people the match magnitude of the crisis. Maximal mitigation is key. Warming is the product of more than unpriced externalities, making a predictable price path necessary but not sufficient. Vendetta 21. Pricing is absolutely necessary but not sufficient. We have a massive challenge and can rely on one instrument about the short period of work necessary. There are several more different play. Not just externalities or knowledge delivers, also policy can stimulate credits in one way with pricing. The idea is not for how you can make investors know. Investors in long run planning know a price is coming. Providing certainty about a pricing path is more important than completely incentives. Credits pricing is less costly for new reductions because we let market make the right decision to get electricity first or building transportation. It's just better tax efficiency combining a deep carbon perspective instead of reducing emissions in the margin. Cost imposition deters fossil market entry at all, unlike solely renewable promotion. With Hagen 15, the best way to fight warming is the price. The price internalized warming, locking fossil fuel in the crust. That's the price makes it costly. However, dynamically functioning movements will affect subsidies necessary on top of the price. One intended policy is a tax or subsidy or kind of a deficit will worse outcomes to know. Policy set policies encourage fossil industries that will quickly cause rapid burning acceleration warming tax forces market internalized carbon. This green paradox is to rise subsidies without taxing and the risk green paradox is under extraction encouraging oil in the fees subsidy shorts oil in the fees of those subject warming and short run pricing imports prevents leakage and reduces modeling necessary for global solvency. But without a domestic price, countries will roll back protection and subsidize emitting industries. Wolfram 23. Tariffs receives unfair profits imposing carbon costs and deceiving a tariff keep it active but a disadvantage based on their producers relative to U.S. underground efficient policies. Important reduces effect level field as possible, reduces the accountability subsidies to maintain competition such as underground carbon policies and result in governments with these reasons only voter adjust the presence cost of policy to could address the free rate of equalizing costs for all serving U.S. market benefits like principles accountable to subsidies to subsidy virtual lead dissipation reduction strength and rationale for carbon risk adjustments to use virtual policy around foreign adjust for political carbon for the transition cost of policy trade citizen price and response to EU also Russia adjusting is key for encouraging maximal foreign mitigation and targeting non-traded emissions. Wheels 21 price equivalent is used to calculate adjustments for countries use policies of the pricing would maintain into the countries to implement strong emissions policy to the extent of jurisdiction is successful producing exports of emissions intensive goods pursuing mitigation of the fierce tradable sectors as leave its emissions arise will result in higher price equivalent need for emissions rights in non-tradable sectors. It covers enough emissions to incentivize global mitigation and key in the fall of BCA strikes balance between liberal durability is implementation performance could be limited imports avoids incentive for domestic carbon exports including the sectors with high carbon reduce the ambient tax over and also delivering significant benefits. Such sectors notably influential constituencies inclusion threshold being met for intensity to entrench of BCA avoid exempted countries can risk flows of carbon dioxide through such countries. BCA could adjust for the carbon risk of reform reduces including explicit implicit prices going down to basic finding improving data for carbon and trade goods and counties supposed to be consistently active base or the Pachira MG tap into this database with administrative ease or 21 to charge implements or common data is already available. The tax emissions for by sector project emission could be determined the existing data is able to not pass the storage data is able to account for 80% of traded carbon BC or more substance data already used many use GGB to identify impact through disposal for complex good source data from suppliers and consultancies across countries of origin companies tracing can associate for parallel adjustment customs and enforces duties at a number of complexity, physical, purpose, already engagement, HR, already conducting due diligence, expects overseas facilities, justice departments, awards, representing penalties for fraud to R&D portfolio. It is necessary for commercializing next generation of Aiming Chong 23 competitors investing in low carbon capture, tech capture, growing clean markets, really China nuclear capture, increased hydrogen capture rate for the RA is turning point. Individual cars more than basic funding risk proactive investment along with perfect competition, clean energy. U.S. leads challenge by China's taking over the U.S. for harder trade, aviation, shipping, trucking solutions. Must be commercial scale more than making that individual complex systems for low margin businesses that get large RTT run build out of projects capital intensive addition because there is no difference of electricity from coal versus wind and externalities such as common and affiliated merchant tech Canada distinguished from incumbents that must compete in price market first from around the U.S. commercial aided investing large scale to serve climate fit for humans. Allocation is competitive and goal driven. Focal 21. Public missions would be less vulnerable to capture government include goal increases for renewable energy to make it order for fossil industry to subvert government and bodies for programs that include neutral experts, consumer reprisals, industry would force industry reprisals justified against public goals and empower actors removed from special interest bodies to take guidelines for allocation. Review board should evaluate outcomes on a regular basis and government should fewer tools less vulnerably capture such as combinations. Innovation alone causes international free riding in the absence of pricing. Judge 21. I might get an additional card. Innovation case like global urgency purpose HR really visibility appetite reveals worrying for it among all nations. Indicates governments free readily estimates are also significant countries urgenization. The more nation trades created free rights finding contribution from worldly climate change over Canada. RT and trade in 32 countries. Distribution ceases and flips and emergence and nullifies expectations for first encourage innovation. Would actually have to solve for implications more coordination prior to deployment is needed. Anything like that? Okay, let me get some water. Very good.
What's included under the competitive portfolio of low carbon technologies?
What do you mean? Like renewables?
Renewables? What kind of renewables? All?
So we don't know exactly what the tech looks like because it doesn't exist yet,
Sure.
but the way that we determine what technologies receive the subsidies is we set some kind of a goal. So we need a efficiency technology that reduces tailpipe emissions from cars this much, and then we, establish, hey, here's the money for that. Come test out innovations, and the best one gets it.
How much does the carbon tax increase by?
A substantial amount.
Okay, the Beeson card, there's an unhighlighted part that says Europeans are consequently castigated as naive freeloaders, unprepared for a seemingly inevitable power struggle. These power struggles are inevitable. Why doesn't that make the impact inevitable?
You're quoting the straw person part of the card. The EU is frequently castigated. And then it goes on to conclude that that critique of the EU is completely unfair and that the EU, for all of its problems, is helpful for...
Sure. It says the SOIs are between authoritarian states and like the United States and their allies. I guess what fracturing impact is from these fractures that I guess already exist now?
I have no idea what you just tried to ask me.
Yeah, so your evidence says the fractures are between authoritarian states and democratic states in Europe.
I mean, that's an example of a division.
Okay.
The EU as an institution is helpful for mediating divisions between European states.
Sure, I guess then the internal link to Chinese dependence fracturing the EU, how does the plan solve other areas where the EU is dependent on China?
We think the most important one by far is the grid. If China can threaten to turn your lights off,
Sure.
That's a much more threatening aspect than dependence on China for other things, in which there might be, for example, other suppliers.
Okay, wait, why does that lead to fractures? Why wouldn't they all just collectively realize, oh, we're getting fucked by China?
John, they could foment division, for example, or they could say, hey, if you respond in a way that we don't like to a Taiwan conflict, we're going to turn off your lights.
Why does that lead to a Taiwan conflict if it's just like screwing up
When
EU
you say
energy
lead to
use?
Taiwan conflict, so I'm going to explain.
This it's not like, oh, all of a sudden that means that like China and the EU, it's not a conflict between like China and the EU per se, but
Sure.
China has outsized leverage with a certain number of EU states that fractures the cooperative potential of the whole European Union, because some of them are vulnerable to China, other ones aren't, depending on their grid integration, which means there's disagreements over policy that China now has a stake in.
Wait, what are the reasons why it leads to like asymmetric cooperation with China?
Asymmetric?
Or in the sense that why do some EU countries cooperate with China more than others?
They need energy now, and the only overwhelming renewable supplier internationally is China.
Why does the plan scale up fast enough to solve that?
We've read plenty of solvency cards that say the app would immediately jumpstart the U.S. renewable industry.
Cool. Wanted to?
Wait, take prep. I didn't hear what you said to me during the process.
Yeah, I'll just prompt it up to you.
Okay, that was
That's
9:58. It's 7 off, then advantage 1, advantage 2.
Where do you want this?
I'll just set it there.
good?
I don't think I can.
Okay.
Just give me 1 second. No, I got it. I just
Oh, okay.
It's alright. I'm good.
Anyone not ready?
I need one more moment, sorry.
Oh, no worries.
Okay, I'm good.
First up is spec interpretation. Absence of violent clean energy policy is absolutely clear mandates of absence of justified UNC conditionality undermines with set links and counterplan competition, which is a bigger impact on topicality, expands background, and kills their predictability, reject them to main 13 clean energy and internally understood greater use of renewable resources and efficiency and starting every resource, their definition of clean energy, direct the consequences, regular term treatment or subsidies, whichever from state to state. And the plan section specified the federal branch secures the plan. They didn't. That's key to agent counterplan, stable links to and politics, reject the AFCO. Next up is attribution counterplan.
Wait, next off is TMBIs.
Next up is TMBIs. MBIs require price and emissions either directly via tax or indirectly via cap and trade. Most all intent is MBIs if I never instrument that puts a price on CO2 or the emissions by the directly via tax or indirectly via cap and trade. Violation the app includes renewable subsidies as extra T, voting for particular limits and ground after movements and adopt positive incentives and or create voluntary changes make the topic bidirectional and skirt coordinating around. Next up is the attribution counterplan. The United States federal and state judiciary should determine approximately $40 the federal damages product of greenhouse gas emissions, and the United States federal and state judiciary should recognize climate alteration evidences and its methods of probabilistic causation and climate change nuisance suits, and that creates a carbon tax out of nuisance litigation, Zasloff, and 08. The initial damages calculation will be the prorated per capita population share by state. If we say the carbon tax should be $25 per ton, we should take the emissions of that by population percentage of state and the damage product using this litigation to construct carbon tax easier, works rigorous, scientific and on climate, and dividing damages pose little problem firms and green and to doctrine DES principles should be guided to carbon emissions tax rate, SS damage, courts have created a cause of action for enhanced risk for future harm, precisely what emissions entail carbon tax rate, do so by discounting for probability uses first, so courts require damages to be discounted to rights for market share of emissions, and second for probability of damages caused by climate change, and ensures the uptake of courts regulation through litigation, which creates a unique bottom up adoption to tort regulation spills over to using torts to overcome governance failure. Kaiser. And 11. Regulation of litigation and development of critical health territorial creating U.S. role as partner regulation that admits state developing in response to catastrophic threats, climate terrorism, disease, market instability, resist, conventional regulatory frameworks, new governments, framework targets, and trigger systems that defy control could all into ideals like straightforward regulation and governance only emerges from continually evolving regulatory law to where Muslim along with the climate change. Those are responsibility to connect your causal attribution needs to be thoughts were law. First would have prepared challenges facing climate friendly days under dark doctrines on alignment causes paradigms of local judges, themselves willing to step further outside the Torah paradigm and non-climate change cases, and adopting towards its regulatory tools is key to bring extra downsides of AI, Ramshkron, and all in 24. MSI causes 100% allergic ability to rating biochemical weapons with power, bringing emissions sectors to operating enough power from several actions to less critical infrastructure, wide ranging, highly efficient facing operations, total infection, behaving unexpected harm from land, propagating uncontrollably online, affecting databases, master catalyses, developers facing consider reliability, editorial application of clear and uncertain laws, and source of legal, first for help, strong potential incentive for developer to agree to a cause of settlement, to have global consider implying to the hard safety by inviting to new models, eliminating the unsafe behavior, API, strong information security, zero robustity, guards against misuse, using uncertainty to existing liability, applied to farm short caused by advanced AI, uncertainty, push developers, neglected liability, assisted with unsafe development, clarifying liability, facility responsible innovation, increase sourceability, to incentivize safety, where perpendicular and liability, logically work to identify when the party is liable for harm. So next off is the security case. The one he sees invested in the discourse of climate security that makes military responses to climate change more likely to the guys preventing threats, Roth et al. In order relations between climate and security, influenced by security, senior abundance, neither both using model, climate change, or set as a multiplier, as lower seeking factors, governance, corruption, and inequality is more relevant, multi-using arguments remain locked in, firmly determined as well view that describes privacy to resources, scarcity does not have to lead to the violent conflicts. Only one factor where better scarcity is led to increased cooperation, United States remain highly uncertain and mental existence of climate crisis, dependent upon discursive context, the framing of climate change with your security, justified measures, climate risk, climate is enough to policy to incorporating ecology, military adopted decarbonization to protect basis from climate change. And the one he sees here as climate refugees, justifies border control, militarization is based on racist framings of migrants as threats to the stability of the nation, and a reason to vote negative. May and 22 we see the agents of refugees sustainable resource introduction, class government portray climate refugees starting to justify during the border management for the assumption that refugees cause the same resource protection on receiving states that push to make the migrant in the first place. CT narratives like evidence supporting link between climate change, migration, and climate study, the proof established like widespread evidence of gravity, severe, and foreign policies, the global and north imagine fear, the black and bodies crossing national borders, and complete the common identity, and inexplicably racial, the interracialization of climate migration, segregation, is active arts, social mastery, here to avoid a service of day craft, vote negative to reject the one you see, alternatives refuses the one you see justifications based in climate security is key intervention in research and rhetoric that upholds violent climate security discourse, Roth et al. In order to affirm common critical climate security and its highlights the role of research and opposing climate security, new avenues, critical intervention, politics, new ways of practicing critical relation, unfolding climate crisis, emerging humanity, development, the natural world, reinforcing critical collection, natural order, producing new ones, versus modernity, rewards, reactionary projects from the extreme right, military waste and security strategies being adapted to climate realities, reforms are being created, projects funded, and then climate security much more than economic discourse and national government the structures, institutions, and actors. And next up is the diplomacy, this at you, and you guys are going now, corruption, 225, European Indian movement, recalibration, Trump created crisis, relations, troubles, needs and alternative political relationships, and the offer to economic and political appeal, and that requires limiting the U.S. to cap, otherwise break relations, Falcon, and 23 used for from the leading set term setting and adventure money activity remains because rules suggest for during moment to your organization then do back at you and also mitigate the consequences of both their political competition or with their recommendation given U.S. umbrellas a key enabling factor underpinning unity efforts undertaken to increase the use for well under by you compensated progression and somebody will for succeed in forging it simple Indo-Pac space and but India dip cap is key BTH and 311. Modi noted India and Europe was recommended world game from world co-op makes India national border group cabinet is invaluable. Exchange and transactions in Trump's return clear signal of the use political commitment to India, regular dialogue system, global security, trade, and finance. We're kept the U.S. with close allies. The climate approach is the largest terminator broad promotion of LAO with U.S. in action spurs EU attention, which enhances and improves the LAO Albuquerque. In 21 climate change regime because of places unilateral no other area than Trump is due to anti-Singapore, so no facility freezing standards, subsidies not regs, HFC emissions, methane leaks for version effective legislators, second multilateral countries benefit from that. Status quo like the EU, to new rules and enhancing engagement for artificial origin, plan, multilateral engagement, maintaining the LAO. And the next off is the states counterplan. The states tribal territories should adopt rising carbon price and border adjustment of approximately $4 to support a competitive portfolio of low carbon technologies. And LAO is on the brink, collapse turns every advantage, ensures U.S. China and or Russia conflict. The economists 24 efforts the border looking economy looks resilient. The order to discover the global economy has eroded a dismal still collapse in anarchy where wars resort of great powers they back to crack down to be fast and brutal subsidy wars are countries copy China's and America's backing for green infrastructure conditions right there. Already defunct rural class losing credibility owned American and collective nation into chaos with poses self taxing the global economy history so more creative collapses are possible and mark the guard possible go to case. Advantage. No terminal warming back Shamgum in 23 net surge CO2 policy would be validity ventilation will come to a halt by the increase in CO2 by 2100 people not inter will CO2 combination not actual there temperature health modulate temperature suitable human travel no climate related financial commercial models over increase CO2 models like that CO2 has been declining for 145 million years since radiation tablet models now predict extreme weather added air home return climate introducing excluding curve show CO2 would be only at 634 ppm and 2150 no cut level CO2 measurements have been negative to the next active volcano in models ignore CO2 and soil vegetation ocean and acidification is not internally it's gotten point one better since exists in 1750 Burnett and 21 instead of ocean data is also gone over millions of years oceans are not under the rate of pH averages age accumulation estimated decline by 0.1 since 1750 government ocean method to remove southern suffers for media having fears ocean unreliable but no impact to food insecurity SOVA in 23 12 average hunger food instability group climate crisis research and economic shocks food insecurity early which is common fears not a precondition stability to provide security no unnecessary forms for from government and the qualifications started to show they never study science and work for misinformation company go to advantage 2. Don't give them extensions based on a laundry list of boost terminal. They should write it in the one you see anything else. Skews, blog strategy, no enter yours. Post in 14 to 4 states are coming to minor bid for Germany, Europe, it's not polar forces, good retail, Western Europe, Germany is a direction with deeply inter-military, well, but actually Germany would find itself an object of balancing rights of government forces can fairly much brigades also for democratic issues. They would have a double time mobilizing for interests brought in. No European pro-lift terrorists. In 19, nuclear scenarios will be taken off the table. Have their zero chance of you. The Germany does not have the wherewithal for the program, even there is indigenous enrichment or for processing support. The region is not worth thinking on real supports. Some granny garden just at the political level to be support president would place the country's budget under the one second. If there's zero interest for establishing a union with a single objective and no objective inequality is wrong. Trump thumbs by escalating tariffs and there's no trade wars. Internal 10. It's what I'm using to cover 1951 and 2010 states of less than the initial conflict there, where you can only depend on the highest dependent targets that trade independence and predicate possibility of interstate conflict initiations dollars being an accurate picture of everybody's imposing economic costs and military international security institutions that have peace and independence logic. Says these are what causes of conflict. Mark the card conflict and can't mediate pandemics interconnection would cause it to spread or the WHO checks the same way and Trump circumvents the AF Newman. If we're one of those leading American scientists have issued a stark warning to the U.S. is leading science being submitted because of research and growing that research is adhering for their job regarding her proposals from papers removes the scientific term uses airline sciences and government engineering for innovation whether for forecasting helps when predicted by the keeps pollutants and toxins out of the air, water and food and circumvention is go to Solvency.
Wait, just read the other two off. Yeah.
Actually, next up is the Great Descent. The plan to renewable literature and create digitalized, great, uniquely acceptable cyber-tax energy. Monitoring 24/7 security and renewables, great contributed great cyber-tax, seeking rather targets for weak space critical national infrastructure, seeking by managers, targets, hackers, renewable companies, they are regulated under threat to digitalization, the sector mortal, but cyber-tax and digitalized grids, cost cascading, blackouts, Raj Kumar, 23 increasing digitalization, broad security, cyber-security concerns, malicious cyber-tax, digital cascading filters, coordinated attack across multiple gauges across the entire security, power grid, content, and security critical areas, research and grid collapse, cause extinction, Tyson 23. Power grids, whatever, whatever reason, you send back to the barbaric times, not with an if, but when, no for no power contribution, disabilitation, worry, Russian gender vulnerability, if it goes down 90% good pills, physical and cyber attack, short-term outages, just scales over 20 million people with water systems and rapping disease, not mention medications, no substitutions go out, influence other parts, communication shutdowns, instantaneous, no real political pushback, no immediate danger, close to 3 theaters of war, Russia and Ukraine, China invading Taiwan like it take place before election, no more says bull and Iran. Next up is the cap. Carb pricing reinvests in capital domination over climate policy. Vote negative 2. Abandon it. Green 19. Carb pricing done more than a good carb treating extreme polarization. Joke class divisions for any works in the reinvent as the board's program evolutes. Evolutes margin decarbonization. Even politics. Apollo forming can't costs. Armor going to improvements. They need to demand carb pricing as the books and medicine. The vertical arguments with energy and greenhouse lines. Urgent paper fails to mention very to make sure pricing politically palatable and modest price energy effectives. Risk missile very limited. And the capitalism costs and never handles with cash and comment different ones because new nuclear weapon. Much military American order capitalism fuels commenting military. Mark the guard of militaries. Everything conditional.
Yep.
Yes. Topicality, MBI. So MBI is the floor of the resolution. This affirmative includes an MBI. It includes a tax. why don't we get to do something that is a clean energy policy in addition to meeting the floor of the resolution?
We don't think the promotion of low carbon tech meets clean energy policy either, but we
Okay.
think that the floor should set the standard for this debate specifically, because the F should just be a cap and trade or carbon tech.
What's
So
the
we-
resolutional basis for that? Because it says including
well,
doing clean
I mean,
energy
you
policy.
haven't defined clean energy policy as including it. We have defined a
Okay.
word that has intent to exclude it.
So the court's counterplan, this doesn't include the subsidies part of the app, is that correct?
Yep.
Perfect.
Correct.
And you fiat both the states and the federal judiciaries?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Diplomacy yet? What's your link? We never said we cause US-EU relations.
Yeah, we think
We're
that the
gonna
plan.
link that,
Yeah, we read a link to the plan creating them by having Trump take the stance for climate policy. It flips his current posture around, which makes him the leader for climate policy in the global space, which takes away EU and India relations to try to solve it. Like they're currently cooperating only
So
on climate change.
if the US takes action on climate change, that India and the EU stop thinking climate change is a problem?
No, they stop cooperating each other because
Yeah,
it
they
removes
see the US
impetus
taking
for
the lead.
cooperation.
Okay,
It's not like
so
think of it as a reverse to the diplomatic capital dissent, not the generic one.
I'm having trouble thinking about this dissent at all.
Okay. Keep
Why
asking
does
questions.
having Trump take a stance on climate change overcome the other issues that plague the relationship? For example, Trump was like, I want to buy Greenland,
Yeah.
or I want to seize Greenland.
So our Albuquerque evidence actually takes this into account and talks about why climate change is the only determining factor for EU-India relations. It talks about open hostility on other
Your
issues.
2021 card says it overcomes Trump all causes.
I mean, all of our cards assume this. You can even look at the card from March 11th, talking about
actually,
EU-India dip cap, and it's talking about
I really don't
intensified
think you
focus
want
on
the
climate
judges
change.
looking at your cards.
I
They're
do.
That's too
link.
bad, bro.
This Piken card is tagged to say U.S. something along the lines of U.S. dip cap prevents the EU from cooperating with India.
What's the question?
I hate to do this. Where does it say that?
You're talking about the Piken evidence?
Yeah.
Yeah. It talks about how the EU is leading in
Yes.
the status quo. If
Line, please.
a specific line?
Yes.
Given the U.S. umbrella as a key enabling factor underpinning unity, i.e., if the U.S. takes the lead, it will undermine unity by taking away the EU's lead.
Okay. You had a spec on vagueness, correct?
Correct.
Any other hidden reasons to reject the team?
Right.
Yes, on the security K, and I guess you could say the cap K too, but it's like, I mean, if you vote neg to reject carbon pricing, it's still a reason to reject the team. Any other questions?
Now we're at. What's your favorite color?
Purple.
Okay. Trevor?
I just need you to refresh your file, or like save it.
Done.
Are you prepping me now?
We are.
Yeah, I started the timer.
You know what I'm saying? I'm saying on the door, on this.
Yeah.
If that's what you're. Yeah.
Okay.
Got it?
All right, 9 minutes.
I'm sorry, how much time do you have left?
9 minutes.
Cool.
Okay, 2AC should be sent. While everyone's waiting to get it, the order is Advantage 1, Advantage 2, so warming innovation. TMBI, must specify clean energy policy. The court's counterplan. The CAP-K. Climate K. I'm actually going to put the climate reps K before the CAP-K. So court's counterplan, climate reps K, CAP-K. The grid DA, the relations DA, the state's counterplan.
Oh, CAP.
It is now after the climate reps K.
Thanks. Do I have the gallery?
I'm good.
Yeah, I'm good too.
Okay, all three judges ready? AJ's good. Coulter, you good? And Mark.
Yes, warming extinction 1 is Venus 8, Earth orbit 2, half human habitation 2, nuclear war, competition, no drilling, food, water, right, nuclear resource, war, salinity, rising sea levels, effect on all fresh water, which is the Spandenberg evidence causes death from dehydration, air out under precaution, uncertainty over extinction threshold, ought to maximize cost because we don't know at what point warm will get to extinction. Yes, trends, heat days have doubled with CO2, which is Spratt evidence, natural availability, defense is wrong, temperature and CO2 closely correlated, which is our Lenton evidence. Their evidence does not assume tipping points because collapsed natural carbon sinks currently explode emissions now, cloud and ice dissipates with heat as well, speeding up warming to circumvent defense. Empirical natural warming pathways are also wrong and centuries faster now, which is our Spratt evidence, and none of their defense talks about no adaptation. Growth is low now, including uptake. It also crowds out investment in productivity, preventing scale, which is the Spandenberg evidence. It's politically costly, which is the thesis of all their DA links, and warming outweighs levees and seawalls from extreme effects. Acidification goes nuclear fission, key to state and civil stability. Riots cause loose WDs and draw ensuring extinction. Their indicted crib is about his views about pesticides, which was not an indict of our food defense. The second advantage, yes, we get defense. Yes, we get laundry list impacts. They set extinction by name and it lacks specific defense in the 1 and C. Each one of them is a vector to escalation, which is our 1 and C evidence. Posted is over a decade old. The region is primed for conflict now, especially since it doesn't assume our internal link concede European prolif about our impacts concede. Trump cares about inequality because our internal link is not about relations, but it does seek out the EU disadvantage. It's not trade wars either. Please read our evidence. Only EU stops pandemic because operation to prevent spread. WTO only exists with the EU, which means that our internal link circumscribes their all causes and outweighs them. Topicality MBI, including as a floor of last 13, including established the floor for the list of border moves and ceiling. Prefer at 1. Their interpretation makes clean energy policy the same as including, which makes the rest superfluous, demonstrating arbitrariness. Pricing alone is insufficient. Background is key to innovation. And feeding back overpowered vague generics. We need the most cell evidence because it says you can be a carbon tax. They have not read a piece of evidence that says you cannot be more than that under the system of the resolution. Reasonability is good enough because we are the biggest half of the topic, and functional limits solved because you should be prepared to debate carbon tax at the end of the season. A-spec, we specified USFG, we need you absolutely have to specify as much of the resolution for it. A-spec causes infinite regress. The senator spec causing actor counterbalance kills fairness, education, crossing functional limits, and punishing vague check use. Reasonability procedurals cause substance crowd out. Clean energy policy spec, we did. We specified a subsidy. Gonna read this to cover our basis new to 19. This paper office was supported function of clean energy policy. There was the same choice on the USEP, so find those low carbon energy. Specification is bad. Crossify that from A-spec because it's non-resolutional, as well as functional limits and reasonability. Courts counterplan, perm to both, perm to counterplan. Prefer an active competition is bad. Legitimizing EPA to the plan. Courts uphold it boots the outcomes and senator picks, which was from A-spec, perm to the plan, and the counterplans process elsewhere. Counterplans kids should be detaching functionally. Force to remain opportunity cost avoids piece of links last can't solve one suits fail. Ground is 20 kids, everyone kids use courses to change for red pill, things about excuse better, and this will not be quick after litigation. And appeals case exceed the just by side message doesn't complete the wells, drills, and fishers also still thanks to you. Order 2 courts can't yearly enforce a pollution tax causes unpredictable judicial shifts liable and automatic reinvestment to the debtor. 3 absent of BCA, the counterplan causes leakage in foreign production bill, which is the war from evidence. Doing a BCA without domestic tax causes foreign countries to roll back contradiction and subsidize many industries, which is the war from evidence. Judicial separation of taxes are bad. The choice separation of powers cause endless litigation, especially if it includes the taxation. The tax only counterplan fails, makes maximal mitigation. Single instrument solutions fail. The magnitude of warming leave no stone of emissions unturned. Given tipping point uncertainty, which is Van Dender. 2 is salience. Absent subsidies firms opt for austerity instead of mitigation, which is our 1AC chalk evidence that matters. It continues intense industrial pollution. Into 3 is innovation spillovers. Pricing low can't stimulate. And the return on investment. 3 writing inhibits innovation. Incentives absent covering filling for loss. Return on investment, which is the Van Dender evidence conditionalities and issue strict terms of key to tweaky strategy, punish and irresponsibility, and disincentivize shallow research, dismal souls, and can get the assets permanent theory, climate, reps, critique. Interpretation, way plan, implementation against unique and causal links, vote aft, one fairness, think model self root the one to see, make talk about common for the competitive, that's debates, primary incentive, two is clash, epistemology, obvious, core playing question, disincentivizing, research, three, the next forefront for Europe because of their kind of ones that try to solve warming that agree it's an existential threat, extinction first, merit 18, something that actually is vast, more important than to try to function, so I'm going to get tested, see versus life, so to this user, spiritual, all of the judges, 11 is right their own views, the shortest arguments for the issues, all he flash, I believe, Vilvin, which he spends, safety, considers best beside your respective where they happen to be. This suggests a high value for using GGR perm to the alt if it includes penalty pollution, not less than the plan, perm to go for the alt solves links to this plan. The plan's only mandate is a penalty of pollution which is not mutually exclusive with broader social reform, alts must be functionally less than the plan, and that beneficial when the plan's inclusion of impeding solvency, prefer ideological competition is vague, causes plan plus picks that root the opportunity costs of doing the plan, and the alternative, if any ideological commitment to cap is sufficient to derail alt solvency, then any remnants of capitals like Trump, T-Rag, and Pizza alternative perm to the plan, and all alt functions are not banned. The plan picks are voted the force you have to bait to self-prevent any plan fallback and then by clash, surrounding apathies, alts must be functionally less than the plan. Security link doesn't meet our framework determination because climate errors are disconnected from the plan is also good. Late in 21, securitization has been negative due to the effects of the 9/11 unless it comes to securitization from and necessary this genuinely is accidental efforts for new to normal good purpose failed mobilization resources and will does now do some more arguments of this will go forward to consider because we're going to renewable energy or security reason for doing so is good to be able to explain why so much more than something reference to Judiciary's ability to join in crowd control repression to avoid our police to do everything in common. The alt fails, it can't solve global missions because alts can't be out where people in the plan passes prefer it for fairness, prevents abuse of mindset, language transition, offensive feasibility, conversation, and clash because we're simple essentials they stay for computer saying can't solve sound 121 US social communication for foreseeable anything causes emission contamination of entire emissions with still exploded population you're going to go to China, India, and Africa mission for the step 1 to rise, no link to the migration link because we didn't say that it was a security threat and the one you see and our offense justifies inclusion of those representations. Either way, CapK, cross-apply framework as well as all of our permutations in theory about that. If the alt solves all links to the plan, 20, everything we said about this no that accounts with no pressing carbon dollar rules without bound capacity kind of theory of private extension, public private interest, no link, taxes only not link, MBI, pollution 20 carbon tax. It says common bad industry also creates dependence worship goes common bullshit body free markets allowed to go American measure taxes opposite to attack capitalism as well as our alternative theory. This one cannot solve emissions as well because it is not global. If it cannot feed out more people than the plan. Grid DA. Fossil fuels don't have adequate cybersecurity now. Term to another included pipeline suffering rates of more taxes becoming more freely threat is not to get a digital application of oil and gas target cyber tax to be taken more seriously economic digital tax on its way. The internal link is digitalization. Fossil fuels are also doing that. 1024 digital transformation group. To also oil and gas companies are adopting new technology digitalization software and big data tools allow optimized production, cybersecurity, volts, energy, burden, with the energy issues while we're representing that investing 40% of energy organizations are spending 5 to 50 billion dollars to budgets are increasingly tied to regulatory pressure, ensure resilience, tech ops, rings improve safety, firms develop controls like grid protection and response. Fossil grids create fossils creating centralized grids, ensuring the most devastating attacks. Decarbonization solves goal through 14. Locked in technological systems risk becoming capable of reacting to change. Energy use to be built around the central converter, the carbon challenge cards, everything is centralized basic approach to socialized systems and advantage include resource cost for reduced transmission efficiency gains, lower grid costs, and results energy distributed generation involving small scale providers and a large share of renewables. If they're right that states will attack this by retail BS and WBCO 24, no achieve 100% cybersecurity despite ever changing risk innovatives, cyber criminals, and human error. The plan solves their warming turns grid collapse. Don't want to read that card. Alright, go back to the courts counterplan really quick. Forgot to put this card there. AI will wipe out humanity. Its goals are an existing thing on Richard 23. Discussion just AI will create a system because intelligent species naturally constitution of relationship between species and mutual interdependence. AI is not competing for resources with humans, so we find with energy and materials and it depends on super intelligence would preserve humanity since with fundamental advances exist in our planes or like their systems mutual slips more likely the path that automated economy will be long serving the natural checkpoint for intervention. Automation would require major advances in hardware, robotics, and AI control with WD provides humans with natural checkpoints. The counterplan is also one single tort ruling that obviously doesn't create it in the area of artificial intelligence as well. That India disadvantage. Trump has destroyed U.S. international credibility already. Works 313. Policy makings about relations to big things. Nations conduct coalitions over last month. America's national relations has spent the Greens, Europeans gone for a shock to revolution. Canada and Mexico are treating America as your foe. This is not just a Trump problem. America's whole reputation shot no for litigant. Trust authoritarian idols. Trump collapses relations. Tariffs, structures, and military aid. Abandon Ukraine. European populism breaks free from the end. Alleging 12-7. 4 years of Trump promise to be crucial for U.S.-European relations. In 7 days approaching days from Europe. From Washington, Europe is currently unsettled. For Trump's return, U.S.-European relations potential deterioration not seen before. Trump's priorities markedly diverged. Tariffs, reduced military aid. NATO Trump's strategy to resolve the Ukrainian war threat to shift the balance of Russian favor shaping translated relations. Trump's 10 years like it is significantly widened the transatlantic divide. Pronounced fracture. Europe may wide weightage forward movements which could further complicate tensions. Greenland alone sinks in relation to a total of 3-2-3. Greenland can sink in relation to the island of sovereign Danish territory. There's no minor territorial squabble. Denmark is founding member of NATO. The EU. Trump is not ruled out force coercion with compelling European powers to make the choice. The liberal order is fake. Quarter 25. Trump's about to terminate trade alliance to democracy. This claim of racist. Reagan's trade wars heavily protectionist foreign bills. Also another ship act designed to kneecap China's microchip industry for 8 years. Washington practice ruthless power politics. Alliances were expendable. Kennedy coerced Germany. Nixon sold out Taiwan to purchase Tente. Bush federal consolidated for Brussels to cancel war legislation until the first reminded times of the notable 6-year legislation. The democracy drive did not survive Bush's secondary democracy within U.S. interests with Hamas. One countries outside America's protective wage not which be led. Trump is avoided to get money responsible mythology of the war on terror and global financial crisis.
Lecturing, the plan causes more climate emission internationally, not less, because of the BCA.
The plan causes more climate emission internationally, not less, because of the BCA encouraging modeling states. Permed to both, it shields the net benefit because it diffuses blame for the plan. States and federal fiat is a voter, it's unfair, legitimizes Lopez, beats every deficit, and has zero literature rooted education. The two are can only go for one layer of fiat. Can't solve one, strike down foreign, and don't work. Commerce Clause, Shell 19, foreign Commerce Clause, Commerce Clause, Constitution, Apply to trade, stable taxation. Good frustrate government uniformity will likely be struck down by the Supreme Court. Congress, Supreme Court, order measure to solve leakage. B, import export clause, verse 23. Import export clause prohibits any state from imposing any duties and imports. This court limited that to imports in foreign matter countries that matters. A, causes leakage, which zeros warming solvency. B, it fails to convince other states to act on climate change, which is the meddling evidence. Back to the security criticism. The alternative is zero support causes fascist crackdowns and masturbation. All offensive for World War 23 and Gavin Revolution according to his finest chance of power could only be by global dictators on religious goals, growth, disease, emission, will fall into 40% without single climate change issue zero. Eliminate all issue with a car, reverse all well for the well being, political stability, pre-industrial world, nourishment, salvation, overstation, population, change, 10%. Radical returns to Soviet solution, only for 10th, the religion, issues, counterculture, will never know what is everyone's head. Markets, justice, and this Russia turned out a more predatory state. Wolf is kind of predatory state.
Are you good for cross 6?
Yes.
Kind of confused about this Brooks evidence. It says that Europeans are already in revulsion of America as a whole. Why wouldn't that mean they inevitably just buy Chinese goods instead of Americans?
Because one, they care about economics. We've read like 4 cards in the 1AC that's like plan spurs, really low cost
They
US
care about
renewables.
economics. Trump tariffed the shit out of them. Why
Okay.
is that trigger?
They're not buying renewables from Trump. They're buying renewables from American companies.
What's your point? The tariffs still apply to the goods they buy from American companies.
Maybe this was like a DA you wrote for the old AF where we did have an advantage about EU relations. This is completely different. It's about US supply to Europe. It has nothing to do with the heads of state getting
Okay,
along with one
but
another.
even in a world where the U.S. increases its supply that they can sell, why does that guarantee the EU would buy it if they're already revulsing against America?
Because they hate Trump. They don't hate like freaking I can't think
Trump
of an
is
energy
still
company off
president
the top of
post
my
plan.
head.
Like he's still president post plan.
The same answer still applies. They're not buying the renewables from Trump, people. What are we doing?
Okay. Tariffs still apply to those companies, but I have a question about this turn on the torts counterplan. What about state and judiciary, like appropriations of blame, would remove separation of powers?
You talking about this credit card?
Yeah.
Flow check, didn't read.
Okay, then I'm confused about the deficit as well, because it's about like generic lawsuits to solve climate change and not like a way to attribute blame to polluters.
Okay, so we
Why would
attribute blame to Saudi Arabia, and your expectation is that Saudi Aramco is just going to show up in a U.S. court willingly?
I don't see like where the counterplan makes the claim we attribute blame to Saudi Arabia.
Then how can
Then
you
you
solve
just
warming?
nuked international solvency.
What? Okay, where do you have a card that says like taxing Saudi Arabia or attributing blame to them is key to solve warming? Because the app doesn't do that either.
So we read a fantastic piece of evidence, the 1AC, Clausing and Wolfram. You can go back and read it during prep if you'd like. It says when we use a BCA on other countries, it encourages them to model the plan because when they send exports overseas, they want to have those be produced with the lowest carbon energy they can. It increases their competitiveness.
Wait. Okay, that's fair, I guess. The answers to security, perm, do the alternative. Is it just a question of if it includes a penalty, or is there any other like form of competition this is testing?
What? If the alt does the plan, everything else is plan plus. That's what this argument is making.
Okay, I see. In the transition wars card you read at the end, what's the warrant for like a rejection of the 1AC causing it?
It's not a transition wars card. This
What's
wolf
the-
card is just like if you try to solve warming in a way that is not consistent with like gradually transitioning our energy system.
But it requires like a
causes
full scale.
poverty, inequality.
It requires like a
vast
full scale
destruction of global
revolution against the
welfare.
current means of production. Correct. It
What's
seems to
the
be in the
question?
context of a revolution.
It certainly is.
Cool. So anything that's not a revolution would not cause that.
Not necessarily. It depends on the way you explain your alt, but I have a feeling you're going to say
957.
that's very similar to the plan.
you send the AI card on the torts counterplan?
That was in the doc. It was accidentally under the grid DA.
Reasons to reject the team.
Conditionality picks state and federal fiat combined. Let me run through really quickly, make sure there's nothing else. Yeah, condo picks state federal fiat.
We're gonna stop at 7:36. Oh, it's getting the stand. Order is the security kid. The state's counterplan. The cap kid. Then there's 1 and then 2. Can you write that 733?
Yeah, 733.
Yeah. Is everyone good?
Still loading for me. Hi.
Panel's good. Pretty good.
Yes, I.
Kansas dropped every part of the security key. The alternative is in degrowth, and we don't disagree with the thesis of either 11 card. They concede that Russia rely in the context of climate security from qualified authors studying the links between academia, militarism, and climate security that always unwarranted assertions by undergraduates who want this framework. The one EC is an object of research. We get at least of the plan as well as the justification. They can weigh the plan if they win. Their justifications are good. Solves their offense and outweighs one. Fairness justifications are distinct from reps are interludes are word picks and ensures we can only test things they have already staked out as offense in the one EC, i.e. their impact scenarios. That also solves reciprocity. They have to win. Their justifications are good and they can win offense against our justifications, i.e. they can always impact when they care to defend their scenarios. Say fairness paradox are relevant. We are saying fairness is bad. The security case is fair because they construct the entire one EC. They have infinite practical ideological defense of their impact. Also, they also impact on the K, which means they have, which means our interim solves their offense, but it also solves in-depth education for us. They have to defend the truth behind the one EC. Our offense outweighs the judge as an educator, not a policymaker. The ballot doesn't result in a carbon tax, but it does endorse the one EC as a research project. It endorses the one EC was a good idea. Voting neg refused the core justifications for why the plan is good, which is the only thing the ballot can solve. Also, there's a double bind. Either the harms of the one EC are true and extinction is inevitable because voting half can't spill up in time to solve, or their impacts are constructed, and it proves the link to alarmism. Also, justifications outweigh in the context of climate security. Rejecting the normalization of security in this space, that was the utopian imagination of the plan turns their fiat offense also in 24 climate security driven by imaginary crisis against a critique of eco catastrophe of experiment to the possible rather than during a dream utopias to refine the present its balance climate security fixed in the space of common concrete urgency space for conversation, sustainability, security, rejection of disconnect, demands a different kind of securities, incentives, making human militarism liberal, naturalization of the status quo, mark the card at status quo, and the D is the militarized subjectivity. D there, research is cooperative in service of militarism, directly what do you see? The level of epistemology is key belongs in 24, the environmental security research absorbed and reinforced through planning, funding, and circulation among the state and foreign DoD, research positive environmental security, culture, predictive conflict, become influential on policy makers, journalists, shaping and streaming academic discourses, in terms of capture the technical scarcity, conflict, this is going to be the rise in institutionalization, climate security, studies within academia, think tanks, and government bodies, reviewing long discarded environmental deterministic and racialized stereotypes that influence conditions, shape ideas about society, environment, potentially reviewing security, literature, naturalization, security, and conflict, and organization, history, and discontextualized case study, invisibilization of historical factors and economic inequalities that structures scarcity, and also fiat are linked turns their fiat of a good offense or imagination of new worlds, and the one he sees tied to militarism that prevents the cultivation of new worlds and challenging ideological bases, and sequencing the ballot solves our epistemology offense, but it can't actualize the plan that outweighs. That's awesome. The all adopts a form of climate critique that experiments with the possible. Their model is trapped in a utopian imagination of Trump passing liberal climate policies and scenario planning the entire case, and impact turned into tying national climate security and similar simulations to framings of climate change. Our links prove the app is a form of scenario planning fused into militarized forms of climate security. And data 2EC2 is util in case that way. Securitization makes extinction inevitable. That's Evans 1. Liberals that makes war on whatever threatens it. That locks in a planetary state of warfare based on threats to uphold humanity. Upheld by the app. 2 is evolution, a new dimension of warfare informed by technological realignment, and then distancing allows security logic to create a metaphysical hubris that places humanity at the point of extinction through endless warfare to sustain cyclical justifications for liberal security. Rejected kills a triad. They're based on ethno-political, racial, global south balance, suture and climate security event. Bowen and Hofgen 23 out tension between death and urgency. Transition as the discourse of crisis urgency and emergency becomes dominant. We lose inside of political ethical consequences every day lies in the global south that cannot be accomplished through haste and urgency in the context of climate. Decision making democratic tendencies favoring illicit perceivable positive technocratic governing and reducing the scope of accountability and transparency in a co-power relation between the ones responsible for climate change and the ones facing the impacts do not address the root cause of injustice, and consequentialism is framed through a Western lens of preserving the good life and dissipate flip that calculus by prioritizing violence that doesn't show up within Western frameworks. We've Nolo and 7 rhetoric of modernity concluded the rhetoric of salvation is good for all life, the dispensability of human life, and not all massive killings have been according to the same value. The visibility the criteria value of human life is not obvious of imperial politics, and unseen becomes a vanishing state to value other human lives who do not have institutional matter ranking of human lives according to racist classification. They say do both in the alternative one. Cross-apply the framework debate. Winning framework means any perma severance out of the core frames and justification of the one he's saying the alt is incompatible with the one he says a research party causes Afghan or distorts fairness and clashes reason to reject the team. 2 all of our links are dissets or it's severance line to shift out of justification makes the FA moving target makes it impossible to be negative. 3rd is sequencing. Rejecting militarized frames of security is a necessary prerequisite to effective climate policy that's wrought towards the co-option of the permanent co-ops any radical attention of the alt and reduces it to a footnote. They say the alt must be functionally less than the plan. Plan focuses bad. It reduces the one EC to a 10-second statement and leaves the rest of it unquestioned. A encourages argument and responsibility. They should be prepared to defend their research and activity that prides itself on quality research, key to education. B is advocacy skills and clash reducing debate to justify and skirts. Defending core one EC position and voice in-depth debate. See their interrupt limits all epistemology, critical security studies, and other rhetorical critiques are predictable and forcing us to disagree with the entire limits of debates about discourse and the way we could frame the world. D's accountability plan focus brackets out discussions of racist or colonial assumptions within research and scholarship. The impact is continued sanitization and colonial knowledge production. That's the raw evidence. If we win framework, it means any permutation of severance out of the core frames of the one EC. It also means we don't need an alternative voting. NAG doesn't generate uniqueness with the links refusing the internalization of climate security in this space and iterative process of critique. The unsolved refuses the militarized justification behind the one EC. The next argument, capitalism doesn't impede the all is irrelevant. We don't disagree with capitalism as a structure of power. They say pigs are a voter. The K isn't one that was crossed with reason. The argument now the team also takes out their floating pigs offense on framework. And next is the first leaving card. Leaving will prove almost all of our link arguments. One, the entire article is propaganda for why the military needs to be a part of the struggle against climate change and mobilize forces of nationalism based behind climate action. Even says that to prevent being hated, the military armed police needs to do everything to prevent climate change. 2, it justifies violent rhetoric that warming is only a problem if Americans suffer hardship and that warming is existential to all major states. 3, it concedes that security institutions occupy themselves with a range of threats that are not military related to ensure that they win the ideological battle. And inserting blue and reading the part of the article that they left out, leaving in 20 climate change, national security, the military, the extension of national security, clinical climate change, only federal extension of the process in the end of the world. Cold War security has been expanded, taking in relation to areas the U.S. military needs to throw its full weight behind the Green New Deal report by the Army, where culture, Army leadership, security, culture, requirements, of conscience, ahead of the social demands of mental stewardship and service. The leader for the broad support enjoys now, Martha Carter enjoys now, and the next climate buying card, the logic of climate buying is violent. One says that military chiefs must declare more strongly that warming is existential because sacrifices from populations will be similar to those needed in times of war, and that persuading conservatives requires the military to speak authoritatively on climate change that is asinine and justifies the military co-opting climate action, which is the thesis of our link. It also double turns with the app. It says that climate change gets drowned out by other threats, i.e. the other advantage, inserting in blue, and the climate. Now, the 2 links first is climate migrants. That's my racist frames of migrants as threats to the nation will sustain resource stocks and cause conflict, allow the states to justify technocratic border management, create a broader imagine if you're a black and brown bodies crossing national borders. The one you see Spagenberg evidence says that threat of nuclear escalation is growing, but when you actually look at the card, the context for why they highlighted nuclear escalation is about global migration, which they basically say that global migration causes nuclear war. The one you see Barford evidence is even more clear than this. It says that EU cooperation and fracturing is bad because it causes inequality in migration or prevents the EU from addressing migration, which is a racist way of saying that they're afraid of African migrants flooding Europe, and it's based on a neo-Malthusian conspiracy about population size and resource shortages that feed into violent forms of militarization, Cusado in 22 climate changes a threat to national security, plus upon new malnutrition and environmental conflicts, and access to serious violent unrest, foreign security, resources, measures to counter those supposed by climate migration, terrorism, climate change, incorporating into military planning, other direct threats, flooding fires, wildfires, and sea level to military infrastructure discourse, frames people displaced by the disastrous threats to national security, the way of life, the assumption the majority will try to reach here for the global militarization of border, justify militarization, border security, discourse, support military actors in climate governance intervention, stabilize risk countries, and next is the climate wars ring. That's the raw evidence once neo-Malthusianism informs links between decreasing resources and conflicts upheld by the ass framing of climate change as a threat, multiplied locks and Malthusian environmentally deterministic worldviews ascribes primacy to the resources, justify expectation measures against the global south. It too ignores scholarly consensus about the causality of resource scarcity and conflict cooperation, resource abundance. It says conflict can originate with food shortages, leading to disputes over dwindling fish, which proves, and also the alternative. Quote, Nick, to send the 1EC back to the drawing board. That's raw one rejection of the 1EC's justification based on climate security as a critical intervention in the securitized research, which the links establish approximate impact to rethinking security in relation to the planetary crisis, draws and destructive drivers of liberal modernity. Group all their all-fails cards. They're not about the alternative at all. They're about degrowth, which is distinct. The alternative provides uniqueness for the framework and link debate. If we win, the app participates in a research that justifies approximate impact. You should vote negative to reject it. And condo is good. We get the condo versus apps with actually, we just get condo. We get what we did. One logic proving the counterplan is bad doesn't disprove the app. Logic is key to predictable condensation. Both sides to a snack flex. The topic structurally favors the app. Infinite prep to error outweighs time benefit. The block and add-ons and terms. Risk-free counterplans are key. Functional limit and preserve fairness. There is info processing multiple options. Force to efficiency, enhancing critical thinking, real-world skills. Fourth is research there in term. Cause the risk aversion that stifles innovative counterplans. 5 is app condo. 2EC pivots based on 1 and 2 strategy plantics are meaningless. App sandbags are best offense. 6 dispo doesn't solve no predictable interpret advice intervention. 7 don't vote on theory. Causes substance credit reasonability on non-rest theories. Key to limit arbitrariness. The state's counterplan perm is a reason check the argument, not the team. The cap concede perm theory is a reason check the argument, not the team. You're going for torts, right? Okay. I only need to read defense to food insecurity. There's no impact to food insecurity that Silva 1 correlation studies are flawed, overwhelmed by all causes, and prove that food insecurity doesn't produce conflict, and food abundance produces instability the same way. 2, no impact to shortages. Their studies are overblown. Charles and 20, the risk of food shortages. Prices get used regular trend for century to abundant food and declining prices of people panicking. Computer model predict the lower price turned out to be right. Price came back. Number of people quarterly. Food price only 1/3. Lobbyists use the idea. Even scientists overstate the risk of shortages. Farmers keep finding ways to grow food supplies resilient. Caron net all in 23. Global food is resilient. Supply of percentage population live with food is double the population living critically low. Supply of double or drought 52. 3 long run downward trend of food prices have been observed. Insecure people suffering from conflict, lack of food supply. Mark the card at food supply.
Okay, are you good for cross-ex?
Yeah.
So presumably under a model of objective research, losing a debate on this argument would cause subjectivity shift, is that correct?
Yep.
Okay, so why do you read impacts on the app that say warming is existential?
Why do we read? Well, we think it's an ongoing process of critique. We think that every instances of rejecting the 1EC is good.
What?
Also, switch side debate condo. You haven't made this argument to 2EC, so it's irrelevant.
Okay, I think the judges as well will determine that. I want to ask a question about this migration link. During the 2NC, I was so surprised by the crib link explanation that I re-pulled up our 1AC to see what you were referencing. And I think you might be talking about the crib card that's like food wars cause nuclear war. And I can't find the line.
We didn't read the crib card that was in the 1EC.
I'm not talking about the card you read. I'm talking about the part of the 2NC where you're like, judges, they read this crib card. It says that migration causes nuclear war.
Yeah.
Where is that in our 1AC?
Okay, if it's not, then scratch it. I mean.
Oh,
So,
perfect.
yeah.
Okay, so the other example you give is this. Didn't we read crib? Not the crib
Well,
card.
it was in the 1AC that you said, what you read, you said you disclosed it was the same 1AC as you read versus Emory. So I'm presuming either A, you misdisclosed, or B, you
No,
read the crib card.
it's the same crib card. I think you're reading the wrong block to this card because it doesn't say refugees anywhere. But the
Sure.
second.
Well, no, that link is about resource wars, not refugees. Just to be clear.
It's certainly not what the 2NC said. Okay.
No, I said it was under the climate wars.
Yeah,
sure, go ahead.
you've already messed up. It's okay.
I don't
Second
understand
impact,
what your distinction is.
Second impact to this thing is the innovation impact card says that migration is a reason for nuclear war. I'm going to read to the judges what our card says and what we've highlighted.
Sure.
We will hardly survive unless we agree on common solutions to energy, water, pandemics, pollution, tech, inequality, and migration. Where does that say that refugees cause nuclear war?
First of all, this sounds like an argument that you should have made in the 2AC. Secondly,
I'm sorry.
I can-
Did you?
sure. Also, yeah. I'll read you the whole line. Global migration of more than 1 billion people has set in. Countries are at permanent war to uphold the neo-colonial status quo, but the threat of nuclear escalation is growing. That's the whole line.
Where does it tie this?
Wait, we said that?
Yeah, for the unhighlighted part says global migration of more than 1 billion people has set in, and then the next line says threat of nuclear escalation is growing. So the internal link to nuclear escalation growing is global migration that you didn't highlight.
Okay, you're reading the wrong 1AC doc. Command F 1 billion, it's dollars in our solvency card. I mean, where are you getting this from?
Okay, it's the 1AC Spangenberg card.
Okay, you got 25 seconds, where's the line?
It's at the very bottom. The part that says nuclear escalation. You've even bolded the part that says global migration of more than 1 billion people has set in.
1 billion. The countries are at permanent war to uphold the neo-colonial status quo, but the threat of nuclear escalation is growing by day. Full sentence, where does it say migration causes nuclear war?
A global migration of more than 1 billion.
It even called it a neo-colonial status quo.
Say this in the
God,
2AC,
so
man.
ridiculous.
Shit, you dropped it.
Okay. It's just the towards counterplan. So. Attachments. $7:33. Check Slack. 7:32. 7:30. Okay. Anyone not ready?
Yeah, it's still loading for me.
Oh, okay.
Okay, I'm ready.
I don't know how it's doing. Okay. Hold on, I'm just getting up the timer. Okay. If someone's not ready, just feel free to interrupt. The counterstamp establishes the carbon tax through nuisance litigation based on the app's carbon taxation rate of $40. That creates a functional judicial carbon tax that solves the app and depot. Usually business framing solvents are non-quantifiable and not if I could outweigh their deficits against the risk of net benefit times net benefit turning case. And exponential AI outweighs unpredictability, exponentially increases the risk of malfunction, database infection, and creation of biochemical weapons, which turns warming and empowering average chill cyber attacks, stabilizing all critical infrastructure, which makes EU cooperation inevitable. And that's from Chicago. It means they'll never buy our goods and instead buy China, so it's only tying towards the app's carbon price ensures the uptake of toward device regulations spills over to alignment. That's the Kaiser evidence. And 2AC1 is firm do both. First, mutual exclusivity. Taxation is an alternative to litigation. Ensures firms pay the tax to avoid litigation, which trades off with the uptake of tort laws. Second is additions. The firm makes torts as an unnecessary additive, which checks the desirability of torts. Graham and away. Availability of alternatives to tort industry claims out of the tort desirability of tort is always relative to tort reform. One, two choices. The torts with the market alternative for many displacing a tort torts are used to recognize torts in their perception. Versus theories addresses similar ills, making torts unnecessary. And third is power. The presence of the perm limits the power of torts. Regulatory tools instead is gap filling glove. And 11 the courts of arguments is find common law applying to statutory interpretation. There is agreement that common law must be grounded in statutory that interprets as interesting the common law. Common law will be limited to filling gaps. The court is recognized common law following a decision to protect federal interest in those which Congress has given the courts the power to develop statutory gap filling and get guided by congressional intent. The authority derives from statutes. And they say perm with the counterplan. It severs vote for your voter for debatability, makes staff moving target, subverting clash in. And first, the counterplay doesn't result in the app. It uses the app's carbon price to establish a federal damage product, which causes the uptick of torts. This is a non-starter. And second, the tort charge when there's taxes, litigation is not taxation, doesn't go through the IRS, which severs. And third is the resolution. First is adopt, bidder, and seven. Adopt means by law to protect the environment according to consistently understood of between is synonymous with an act applying the meaning of evolution that is supposed to be an act of legislation. And resolve, the counterplay is uncertain, OED, and a non-free from uncertainty fix, and policy, code, 6. Policy means agency, legislators, embodied in intellectual language, and fired through statutory interpretation. And MBS was out all intent, MBS found a for the question to do is try to leave the text, try to leave a capital and should the kind was a mandatory sire. And 17 operate ordinary common meaning of should is a mandatory obligation used near express and BSB. And the federal and CP argument for new plan text justifies it, new advantages justify it. In fact, we could have read two accountable differently than one and C and combine them with two in our proves. The condo justifies this too, and it doesn't prove an opportunity cost. It's the app accountable and exclusive. It's just an extension of conditionality. And they say suits don't succeed, but the cards in the context of a common law suits are forcible to correct environmental harm, not a specific attribution model where carbon emissions are like $40 per ton back to polluting production. It only requires climate torts law plaintiffs, not the rest of the litigative court process. That's the Kaiser evidence. And climate nuisance to be identical to a carbon tax in effect all often. Oh wait, nuisance carbon symbols Magovian tax emissions. They internalize negative externalities and market activities by making activity more costly, more savings, nuance for instance with opportunities, putting damage in internal deterrence straight forward, including nuance with it. Nuisance with the general deterrence means that the nuisance damage is carbon tax just one levied by courts instead of a legislator. And they say, and it does enforce the climate attribution model solve foreseeability. Saw in 23 attribution models, informs foreseeability, future harm studies, simulated future frequency, and intensify again, projective evidence, contributions, risk of future harm, control, life, could be supported by legislative harm, they're predictive, and there's a strong basis for strict liability in climate nuisance, which solves the deficit. Also, have an possible critical cases strict liability from a solid basis for public nuisance and climate cases. Positive theory yields pro strict liability results, and the BCA is not key. The Counterplan solves leakage first. The Counterplan will be functionally just be a judicial BCA. Zaslav entity the manufacturer's product for exporting engagement with the market in American market would suffice under extreme commerce plus doctrine and nuisance cases and emissions can be after the judicial equivalent of BTA, perhaps most promising ways of bringing fishing in. Second, lawsuits against foreign sources in general jurisdiction and form non-convenes ensures it. Zaslav common litigation preventing international leakage by allowing the listeners to against foreign source emissions for average international problem under nuisance umbrella plaintiffs of New York for general jurisdiction to invoking form non-convenience public interest strongly favor keeping the litigation in the U.S. And the fourth argument, and litigation is wrong. We fiat through it. Dropped the solvency that would create a follow-on model for the rest of tort law via one case, which is enough to generate solvency against the rest of the deficits. And the Counterplan prompts doctrinal innovations and legal experimentation to answer endless litigation. Sought 20-year litigation serve as a regulatory regime for climate new set of evidence prompts doctrinal innovations allow official litigation experimentation until optimal versus emerge by the strategies and public record different models informed SEC evaluation and expanding effects considering information through discovery, informed corporate securities law, criminal claims against executives, insurance lawsuits, and they say climate uncertainty. It goes neg because only the Counterplan creates robust climate policy certainty. Policy 21 defendants and realize future costs of international multiplied likelihood they will be sued, increase the cost balance of the probability that defending against liability of damages off fuel or internalization of societal damage result in socially optimal level with occurrence impose the same economic significance of carbon tax. And climate models make isolating competence to specific defendants possible. SOD in 23 attribution methods can isolate specific defendants contribution to climate event quantified in proportion to CO2 emissions. And causation is not a challenge of the Counterplan. SOD in 23 establishing causation not a challenge plaintiffs merely have to establish harms can truly be attributed to emissions without having a direct causal link. And they say salient subsidies are key. Leakage answers above ensure that it doesn't matter, but it doesn't say taxing with the incentive is key, just that it's all better. Market concentration makes it easy to litigate salient. SOD in 23 courts distinguish between major emitters and diminished sources, obstacle overcome by market restriction of high emitting sources. 83 account for 75% large power reduces account for more than 80% emissions. And don't let them cross-apply preemption from mistakes. The Supreme Court rejected preemption state nuisance and plaintiffs can avoid it. Sullivan always for voters rejected and concluded a relation we effectively ensured there are no word of damages. The allocation of it can be a method of governing conduct with the plaintiffs can avoid preemption by failing states against others defendants they actually makes sense not only in legal but policy grounds. And the net benefit proper the term is wrong. AI would not preserve humanity if it is not designed to align with human beliefs. Rogue state actors slow regulation making it go underground as a filter because the more regulation tries to protect it, the further it goes down the rabbit hole. Leaks to do both because it applies litigation with tort law and its trial data uncontrolled AI will become uncontrollable absent early restraints. It escalates other external risk and S risk. Zarsky in 2020. 45 Montreal, very rapidly when possible, human control singularity will happen. SI represents what's your risk at a certain only pandemics that happen earlier than common industry next 8 years rather than century plan friendly. SI can reduce other risks, resign, intercessor, server, cell atoms, and biosphere, splitting each other for humankind, and really long impossible to predict. Complete list of outcomes. SI limit dangers we are not capable of predicting most difficult risks. Tripping underneath the external grave. And even if their defense is right, AI can still trigger a laundry list of external threats. Carl Smith. And 22. Extinction played a role in this on AI does not need to be motivated by hatred, nor does it need to be use atoms for anything. If humans were threatening objectives, destruction would be useful. Biochem, nuclear weapons, and drones, new types of weaponry, surveillance, and attacks on survival and conflict. AI have advantages. They might not have return registers for dramatic conditions require survival not affected by attack failures to back themselves up. And any deficit is filtered through the fact that the Kaiser evidence was dropped in its impact filter. It means the tort law can create effective regulation in the future using the admin state to solve any existential crisis.
9 minutes.
Yeah.
604.
Wait, start one before you send it. Okay, 604.
Okay, 544. Send.
Good for an order vote waiting on that. It's going to be what has now become the case sheet, the critique, and then the counterplan.
And it should have just sent once the doc.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Great.
yeah.
It's like
Yeah,
there was
there's only
something.
one doc.
Yeah, I was like, because you were like delay, yes, no, send, and then it showed up like right after you sent it. And I was like, wait, is this the old doc or the new one? Because like, whatever.
Okay, you
We're
should
good.
not send the doc. It's not supposed to send. Yeah, okay. Is anyone already? Sorry, let me get water.
I'm good.
Venus effect outweighs positive feedbacks like methane and ice melt will desertify the planet. Dropping this impact means you have a categorical preference for offense, since it's the only impact of no defense. Yes, food impact, water and food insecurity, spur mass instability by breaking the nutritional social contract, resource shortages, make states prone to instability and social breakdown, also cause land grabs and resource conflicts with other states. Saying abundance causes instability instantly links them to decay, but it also pacifies conflict because it means states never have an incentive to go to war. Only our evidence assumes fish, which is sort of a technical concession. Those states, those are uniquely likely to escalate because they involve disputed maritime areas. Their resilience card doesn't assume runaway warming, which they have dropped, will literally cook the planet alive. The critique framework, weigh the plan against unique and causal links, prefer it, fairness, objective research wrecks it, ace of point boots the app with singular links, the monopolized prep and offense for the day, weighing the plan as an app fallback for unpredictable niche case, and narrow self-serving links about the worst accesses of the scope. Ace of point dropped and makes talk about blank differently and opportunity cost. It's substitutable for any when you see issue legitimizing plan plus picks. Justifications, not reps, doesn't solve all scholarship. It's justification for the plan, which is proved by one card saying migration. Slippery slope to any link. Reciprocity fails because it restarts the debate in the 2AC based on the 1AC. Flips the burden of rejoinder, makes the app anticipate nag reps which are unpredictable. Security K is not fair since they pick timelines for more cards to justify mooting. The entire benefit to the plan proved by migration example and cross-X. Having back violators doesn't solve the end result of their model. Researching policy fiat proposes false abstraction since it teaches debaters real people advocate the plan. The ballot endorses the plan even if it can't produce it. New fiat double bind. It's an inevitable thought project about what we think is good. They link to since they don't do anything for the violence their links describe. Fairness turns justifications. Ace of point unequal games preclude in-depth engagement and create a moral hazard for trivial Pono case. Piece of point ethically pure decision making is impossible when both teams advocate bad scholarship. The next should lose if their all causes warming or teach the people that a carbon tax is bad and they have to beat the case in the can win. Militarize the subjectivity is wrong. Working inclusive only inquire uniqueness and causality, but raising the link threshold forces the neg to get the heart to the hardest security reps. No subjectivity. Losses are internalized technical errors in religious and economic status quo. But reps don't shape reality. Endorsing a carbon tax doesn't make you more likely to invade the Middle East. Tracy Leeson says security reps like 9/11 have been bad, but are distinct in climate arenas. New sequencing ballot can't solve epistemology since the 1AC already occurred. Another climate reps in debate plus all our authors' scholarship in the real world. The case not the impact toward our reps. Bring plan focus up to the top here. Ace of point no argument, irresponsibility. If bad reps produce bad policies, beat us on DAs plus we're K inclusive. No advocacy skills. 10 years of the security K disproves our term includes epistemology clays if they include alts that are more than framework and require the neg to defend something. Contesting research assumptions can be done with solvency deficits, stopping the debate, or case turns that do not meet the benefits of the plan. Extinction first, physical existence is before for value. And utils best because it saves the most lives. Planetary warfare is nebulous, doesn't get to 8 billion deaths is unexplained and a throwaway line at best. No endless war of the impact is denied by decades of liberal intervention. Yes, try or die. Haste is good for mitigating warming, or else we all die. Consequentialism. K is not an F card. Their card is a K of not weighing all lives equally. Only the neg does that by rejecting UTD. Perm do both solves because it includes their K. Then you link to the perm, not just the F. If the neg can read securitizing reps and combine that with a K as per the 1 and C, so can we perm do both is never severance sequencing. If cooperative are both throwaways, no card substantiates them. They link because they securitize, which is dropped in the 2EC, justifies reciprocal rep severance. No link securitizing warming is key to solve warming because that's the only way to get people off the couch. So there's an extinction DA to their alt to downgrading the salience of warming. No migration link. Their highlighting is misleading. It doesn't tie the two together, and we didn't highlight the line. We're not responsible for it. Migration could be destabilizing, but that's because of the violent response. Now the refugees themselves and cross-ex prove our argument was we need to cooperate. Climate wars filter through the case. We're winning the impact, so it's not a national security call. It's now true. It's not deterministic, but resource shortages can cause war in the unique context of runaway climate change. The alt doesn't solve their impacts on a macro scale because it's not operationalized outside this room. What is all of our dropped solvency claims about liberal capitalism being entrenched? Court's counterplan. Sufficiency framing should be rejected given that they've dropped the impact of their counterplan is not sufficient, which we will prove below. Perm do both, it's double solvency, not mutually exclusive since you can tax and impose liability. It's not additive, the counterplan just fiats that a tort regime exists, which also solves their power stuff. It doesn't solve one, international emitters are immune because there's a presumption against extraterritoriality. That causes a massive increase in leakage, which they've dropped on the state's counterplan. No judicial BTA, they didn't put it in their plan, their cards are old. They don't assume the recent presumption against extraterritoriality too. No spillover to the admin state, it's vacant, no explanation for why it solves subsidies key. Their card doesn't say that it would solve all the other problems, and the tort regime doesn't include subsidies. They've never made their argument. No card says that. Third, is subsidies key? Extend return on investment. Subsidies are necessary for the plan since they boost government shouldering of renewable risks. Green tech was new and untested, so only subsidies can encourage market entrants to utilize green tech. Subsidies are key to innovation. Everyone will bank on free riding off of others' ideas, stifling innovation, unless the government can front load ROI. Carlos 17, without any innovation, society will produce a small bit of innovation as a inability to capture the full value of investment creating. Doing these can be costly. Appropriating ideas, other previews can be achieved through their concepts as free ride. As a result, many will not before that created or NDT stage knowledge can leak reverse engineering. Their conferences, publications, conduit for spillover result is innovators. You want to mark that? Innovators will not produce. Mark at produce. Anything else you want to say on this?
The next card, read it. Or no, just go to go to
Subsidies are key to innovation. Yes, no?
Nah, just go to
Okay. No impact. AI will be mutually interdependent with humanity because it'll depend on us for energy and resources. So it'll have a motive to make us safer, not kill us. Rogue actors are not solved by their internal link. Terrorists using AI won't listen to the torts, and terrorists are not mass murderers. They have an incentive for self-preservation. No AI and no impact and safety checkpoint solve. Hudson 23. Computer have to be capable of improving itself. We have to underestimate it, and it's also how we have to treat people who have the AI. We're going to be able to push one to destroy the environment with crucial powers. Investors wanted to see companies succeed good, so and that safety one. Next is to take its customers, train places, customers, so switch to the suppliers of one. The program others to combat it. Their internal link does not spill over. The existence of one tort system doesn't mean it'll be applied in all other instances. Their cards don't say it'll be applied to AI, and the status quo has a tort system, so it should solve their net benefit. Reject S risks, O'Connor 18. If a destructive tech is possible, why not something that saves humanity and the planet? All tech leaves the potential for bad as well as good outcomes. Death outweighs because it's the only irreversible impact value. Life is subjective, and warming turns suffering because it is a massive preventable crisis.
It's 7:30. You were timer?
Yep. decent.
Yeah.
Orders K counterplan case.
Cards?
No. Everyone good?
Yeah.
Great. Kansas. Yeah. The only winning 2 hours forever when they've conceded the bar for lengthy alt solves conceding our fiat ban and plan focus arguments takes out any reason why they get to wait the plan versus justification links to 1EC as an object of research, then only gets links to the plan and its justifications that they get 1EC as staked out as offense. Threshold for winning this debate is that the link we've won isn't arbitrary when the 2EC on the line by line said that every highlighted warrant on the EU Advantage impact card was a vector for extinction when they answered the 1EC argument about no laundry list. It's only arbitrary because they made it arbitrary. It's reciprocal because it spots them an extinction warrant that we needed a 1NC defense card to. 1. Fiat is bad. The imagination of new rules in the 1EC is tied to militarism that prevents the cultivation of new worlds and challenging ideological biases. They drop the sequencing question that the ballot solves our epistemology offense but can't actualize the plan that outweighs the awesome. Evidence is phenomenal. It says the alternative adopts a form of climate critique that experiments with the possible. Their model is trapped within a utopian imagination of Trump. Only durable fiat turns education and advocacy skills and imagines utopian solutions and bypasses the political process and attitudinal inherency. Nothing about durable fiat teaches you how to engage in legal details or the political process, but their model of debate reduces the 1EC to a 10-second statement, leaves the rest of it unquestioned, which causes argumentative irresponsibility. They should be prepared to defend their research and activity that prides itself on quality research. They drop that their interrupt limits out all epistemology, case critical security studies, and other rhetorical critiques that are predictable and forcing us to disagree with the entire F. Limits out debates about discourses and the way we frame the world. Also, it leads to brackets out discussions of colonial and racist assumptions within research, but they also drop that any carbon tax is limited debate, which means they can't actualize. It means their only impact the ballot can solve is whether our ethics in the debate round is good. Their rep shape reality warrant was brand new in the 1 year. Don't give it to them, but the other implication was that the all can't spill up. An ongoing process of critique solve it, points and rejects examples of securitization. It's the only way to check back against racist assumptions. Their model guarantees every app can include the most racist justifications. All seems to bring back the mildest argument pre-2010 case and just say the app outweighs any racist language and justifications would be inevitable. Our model of the debate solves all their offense. They can weigh the impact on versus the K. In other words, they just need to justify why, including their reps were good. Why Kansas decided to highlight the world migration in the 1EC, Barford evidence, having smaller 1ECs and defending all core justifications solves their model of debate incentivizes running on 1ECs where they highlight a bunch of disparate impacts with little contextualization, and dropping one is a warrant for extinction outweighs. Their model debate allows them to say extinction outweighs any reasonable criticism of the language they use. Our justification which recreates their violent rhetoric, just having one core impact and defending all the terminals. We didn't defend a small random warrant. The 2EC said it was the reason that caused extinction. It doesn't lead to plan plus pigs. They can weigh reasons why the impact is bad or to justify why it included it. The 2EC never did that. They just said no link, and 1EC never said migrants, and it does restart the debate. They have infinite prep to figure out the extent of each of the impact cards. The security case fair that was above. We need to have impact defense. So all the extinction scenarios. Now the fairness offense is irrelevant. The 1 year was too new here. They dropped that fairness only matters insofar as word picks and things that they do not stake as offense and not things that we can make offense. All the 1 year posturing boils down to we could not answer impact turns of defense to migrant war on the warming impact. We also access reciprocity because we'll always have to prove our justifications are good too, meaning they can impact turn or defend our scenarios as predictable answers. Not a question of bad files, but of understanding your AF. Our scholarship isn't unethical. We were forced to read it to test the 1EC and as an extension of content which they drop, but being K inclusive does not mitigate any of our offenses. Key to the normalization of security in the debate space, which means that framework offense can't take or solve any amount of the links because all of them already occurred through the defense of the 1EC. Makes winning easy because we can solve some of their offense, but they can't solve any of theirs. That's the drop Austin card, but they answer also that was answered above. Now the util debate is the util debate proper. The first is their argument about how securitization makes extinction is inevitable because it makes a war on whatever threatens it and locks in a planetary state of warfare based on threats to humanity and in new dimensions of warfare that is informed by technological realignment and distancing allows security logic to create a metaphysical hubris. They say the alternative can't solve war out there. That's irrelevant. It's about using the debate space as a way to infiltrate with security research. It's a question of through endless warfare to sustain cyclical justifications of liberal security and finding and rejecting those. They also drop the Van Bommel and Hofkin evidence that says you should reject appeals for tripartite because they're based on ethnopolitical erasure of the global south and intentions of depth and urgency of transition and discourse of crisis and urgency become dominant and we risk losing sight of political and ethical consequences of everyday lives. But it's also a reason why you should frame the fiat offense first because if they can't prevent extinction then you should frame their racist discussions first. But also the militarized subject DA is also a tiebreaker. Their climate security research is absorbed by the DoD from the proliferation of climate securitization within academia that allows militarism with the justification of liberal security, which only rejecting their research solves. We also have carded alt solves cards in the context of each link. Plan focus is bad. That was above, but the RF often structurally outweighs one. The judge is an educator. Voting app as a result in the plan, but endorses the app's research project as a good idea. Your ballot is a referendum on whether the one app score justifications were good or bad, but it's also but that was also above winning framework means the permutation is a non non-starter, etc. inside of their core justifications, which encourages app conduct, which makes neg debatability untenable, but also securitization, but also they drop the evolution warning about new dimensions of warfare informed by technological realignment. Distancing allows security logic to recreate a metaphysical hubris through endless warfare to sustain cyclical justifications for liberal security. Now, the crime of migration, DA is a D rule. The era of Trumpism and anti-migrant violence makes it a priority. I reject securitization of migrants in debate. If we're winning framework, then it makes, and also winning the link, it means the permutation impossible. All the 1AR defense was brand new. The 2AC did not answer. They just said no link to the migration. They said the apps racist frames of migrants, and 1AC Barford has risk claims that we will hardly survive on this planet, that mankind has basically got its back against the wall, allows the state to justify technocratic border management that creates a broader imaginative fear of black and brown bodies crossing national borders. That's the my evidence. The Barford card is tagged to say risk. The 2AC pretty hilariously said that you should give them the laundry list scenarios all as independent existential threats. This securitizes African migrants that will flood Europe, legitimize xenophobic and racialized policies, and obscures the root cause of migration, such as conflict, climate change, and economic instability. Instead of treating migrants as threats, the alternative instead of their protection, rights, and dignity, framing them as risk distorts reality and undermines human rights and subjugates endless wars. Racialized migrants is under the guise of security. Frame this through the lack of any app speech outlining an actual scenario for how migration tied to migrants is existential, which means there's no offense coming out of the 1AR, which proves our neo-Malthusian link. We don't disagree that warming is existential or food insecurity is existential. This debate boils down to whether migration is existential or not. The 2AC or the 1AR did not extend an extinction, internal link, or impact, but we have offense as to why using the phrase in and of itself is bad, which means Kansas dropped the security case, so they should lose.
543. Okay, but okay.
interpretation weighing the planning is unique and causal links prefer fairness. It's necessary to access debates and incentive structure. If every round were a coin flip to be neg, debate just be burned out and exhausted by the burden of being out. It's an axiomatic prerequisite to debate which the neg agrees with. Fair evaluation requires an impartial and flowing judge. They expect you to do things in the name of fairness, which means it is the only impact your ballot. Can prioritize fairness, turns militarized subjectivity. Their interpretation creates a moral hazard for trivial provocates and technical discursive links which preclude substantive engagement with their literature and the debates that they think are good. Dropped in the 2NR, that creates a huge impediment to the ability of the neg's model to solve their offense, since we never are going to talk about climate security reps, but just how we ought to pontificate about the state of life and suffering in Nietzsche dogma. Their interpretation is unfair. A, it allows singular imperfections to delete any aft fallback of the plan's benefits. There's no tangible limit on what parts of the one you see the neg can critique, and the different sections of the library they can pull their criticisms from. There's no threshold for when the app is justified its reps. The neg can narrow their link to one critique of the worst excess of the status quo. Links can go from cat bad to racial cat bad to green tech is racist to it's good when it's good, it's bad when it's bad, it's inevitable, make it effective. The app never has the plan as a fallback and weighing the benefits of solving warming against the critique. That is the key term link. We need to weigh the benefits of warming to have a fair debate. It's far too easy for the neg to sit on their hands and say, well, you didn't really talk about climate change the right way, and not do anything to solve warming or convince people that we should talk about it in a different way. B, double dropped plan plus competition. Teams can read their K link cards as counterplan competition, and a role object of research determines if the app is good or bad. It makes talk about climate differently competitive and includes counterplans that use the one EC's discourse, but adds focus on groups or plan omitted permutations linked discursively, and there's no plan that generates solvency deficits. This is so important because framework is a no-risk auto win for the app and should be the starting point of your evaluation. You can't weigh the links against the case since they lack uniqueness and are inevitable, which means it should be try or die for warming. If we win this framework argument, but us losing framework isn't an auto win for the neg because we're going to win arguments about why our representations are good to low. Justifications, not reps, does not solve our offense. All scholarships and justification for the plan. And remember, they've set the threshold for links themselves when they suggested that a link between climate migration and a part of a card we didn't even highlight is an object of research that meets their interpretation, which means this is the biggest slippery slope to 0% app win rate ever. 2NR line by line first. They say fiat is bad. Drop criticism. 1. Flow check again. 1 error says, quote, researching fiat policy proposals solves abstraction since it teaches debaters real people advocate the plan. You wouldn't know that under their interpretation since we think we can never do anything if one of the authors that we read to propose a climate policy used the word migration in their paper. 2. Dropped. Fiat is inevitable and links to their model because it's a thought project about what we can do that we think is good. You can't make a link argument without appealing to consequences in fiat, i.e. why is saying migration is a security threat bad because it has the consequences of racism. That is a form of fiat and imagination that is a view from nowhere they criticize. 3. If they win debate state subjectivity, voting app impact turns the model since it teaches everybody in this room that we shouldn't do anything to solve warming and shouldn't do a carbon tax. If that sounds ridiculous, that's exactly the reason the security K won the last debate ever in like 2014. No argument in irresponsibility. We are K inclusive. Also drops. The only thing our model requires is that the neg defense and all that generates uniqueness for the link. What this means is that it's not enough to point out singular imperfections in scholarship around why the way we talked about warming is bad, but talk about how you can convince people to stop writing articles that describe climate and migration as having a link together. Voting neg doesn't unwrite the one EC. It just virtue signals that demonstrates we solve our offense. Case might not look like how UTD wants them to, but that's good because it doesn't move the app. Imagine a 2NC that was like 9 minutes on why economic studies and carbon pricing were racist and said that the app would, that's a reason the app couldn't solve. That'd be a fire speech. At least in the app in that world gets to say the benefits of the plan outweigh that doesn't lead to racism. Just smoke us on a counterpoint to solve our offense. Ballots can't solve ethics. 2NR flat drop that losses will be internalized as technical errors and we will double down and figure out how to make our framework push more persuasive. 40 years of debate in the security K prove voting neg is nothing, not new. With the 1AR 2EC clearly says fairness is the only impact your ballot can solve because it accesses the competitive incentive structure of the activity because they care about winning too, not just being justice warriors for climate representations. Impact turn to the 1NC is hilarious. Our 2AC prep is just going to be like cutting a bunch of cards that impact turn the stuff that they could possibly represent. If the 1NC was literally just this K, would be hosed from the beginning. There's nothing about their scholarship that we could critique. They say they allow us to say extinction of ways. If that's true, you don't solve your offense as well. Yes, you lead to word picks. The 2NR says, quote, we don't because the app can just win the reason their impact reps are good. LOL, that puts the burden of proof in the stratosphere where we have to react to what the neg says after they've already moved the whole case to make app choices new with the 2NR. There are way too many small links they can use to delete the benefits of voting app, which is demonstrated by their ridiculous link saying that we said migration one time in an impact card that doesn't even say it's a threat. It's just a problem that we need to cooperate in order to solve. Fairness does matter as per our impact overview above. It's an axiomatic prerequisite to debate, which they agree with because they rely upon a model that allows us to continue debating about scholarship and representations. Bring militarized subjectivity up here from the permutation debate. Their model does not solve it because of all of our trivial pomo-K moral hazard that their interpretation creates. Now, the framing of extinction first, winning a sliver of risk the app solves warming should give you a categorical preference for app offense. It's the only irreversible impact we can survive and recover from their impacts, not a hothouse earth. Their answers don't make any sense. 1, securitization does not cause extinction. 0 response to the 1AR's arguments. A, their cards don't really say this. It's a throwaway line with no explanation. The word existential is a random buzzword. It doesn't mean we all die. B, empirically denied. The past several decades of liberal interventions prove it might be bad, but it won't cause extinction. The K is destroyed by the novice level question of why haven't your impacts happened yet. They say Van Vogel illegal. They dropped util. You should have saved the most lives. Anything else lapses into the calculus and then criticized because it prioritizes some lives over others. Util is the most actionable form of impact calc. There is no alternative to it, so it must be true. It doesn't erase balance to say we should solve warming. We should outline it as an urgent threat, or else we will all die because no one will be sufficiently motivated to solve it. Perm do both. They dropped perf-con as a justification for perm shielding. Do both solves by doing the plan rejecting securitization. They cannot produce a coherent DA to this because they securitized in the 1 and T. The 1 here made this argument, and the 2 are just this. I think UTD's strategy was just hope that the judges will forget they read liberal order good on diplomacy TA. The neg has forfeited the right to moralize about securitization. They went to bat for the same liberal order that greenlit invasion of Iraq and decades of drone strikes, the torture Treacy Porter is a fantastic neg of this impact claim. If the neg can reject security logic while also partaking in it, so can the app. They've dropped this neg securitization bad into offense. For us, it's worse when the neg does because they knew securitization was bad, but did it anyway. It constructed threats to the liberal order and identified the status quo as something that needs to be protected. There is zero difference between that and what the app did. The 2 had a line somewhere about how they were forced to do it to test the 1C. They could have just read that as a TA, got a different impact that was not as securitizing.
Debate.
Good debate.
Yeah, the neck card doc was sent.
rolling.
All right. Let's go see the Kansas right up there.
Okay, I think you've had chicken fried rice. I sure did. Let me find which one it is.
Is John out there?
I didn't see him.
Oh, you, wait, they have a screen. Oh, okay. I know you got it.
Right.
Okay. You all good? Awesome debate, everyone. It was 3-0 for the AF from Kansas. I can start. I don't have a lot to say. I think like some really excellent debating going on from the negative, but I struggle with like the security link that I am left with in the 2NR is just not as good as it should be. It's not congruent with the 1AC evidence presented as like climate change's interaction with migration. I just do not think that the AF at all is on like the same wavelength as the current Trump immigration regime, and I am struggling to find where like the true threat construction that is happening that you are going for and advocating that the AF is saying, like I am just not sure where it is, you know, based off of what the 1AC was. I think combined with the fact that the neg doesn't have like a super great answer to the perf-con arguments, makes it like pretty easy to vote on vote AF on perf shields, shores up any possible problems with the migration representation of the 1AC, but also endorses a policy that like assuredly solves the climate apocalypse. Militarized logic is probably non-unique, and I don't know what rejecting the AF does to resolve that. Plus, it causes really large issues in just in terms of like fairness of debate to the affirmative, like just in terms of just like endorsing the NEG's framework, like what is the AF responsible for? I think it is too steep. I think you are letting the affirmative get away with the characterization of like what the AF should be responsible for in a big way. I think you're I think what you need to have is like, we are not saying any extraneous thing is critiquable. What we are saying is that we can critique core assumptions of the 1AC, and that is something that like is good for education and is reciprocal. Is reciprocal and predictable, and something that it's good for debate for the AF to not have like, and then that goes back to like kind of like some of the plan focused bad stuff where it's like we shouldn't endorse just the 10 seconds. We need you could like be the middle ground. Like they're saying you're being objectively unreasonable, but I also think like you are probably advocating for the AF to be too responsible for too much, you know, in the way that this debate plays out. And I think just like more of like also just like I feel like a logic. I really don't find the perf-con argument in a vacuum that persuasive for the affirmative, but I think you're not doing a great job. I think like we should just be like debate theory. It's like it is good for the 1NC to present a bunch of different ways that the affirmative is wrong. It is good for the 2AC to have to respond to all of them. Block choice plus 2NR choice plus just like conditionality is sick, like solves all of that. You know, we can still say like, and then maybe we don't also read the LIO impact, so we don't like get into huge trouble, but like, I don't think other parts of the 1NC had like huge tension, and I don't know, I think I was good for it in this debate, but I don't think I'm great for it like, you know, that usually. I thought it was well articulated, but I just will admit I'm not great for the argument. That's what to say.
I can go. I voted more on framework than interpretation. I think the AF is weighing a pretty sizable into the fairness impacts given the way the negative has framed like what it is to be justified. Like it seems the 2AR is going a little less for like no link, more like the link threshold is so small that it demonstrates that what it means to meet the negatives framework essentially allows for like the equivalent of things like work packs, and like the AF never functionally gets their plan, which then leads to all their offense about mooting us, restarting the debate, etc. So I think there's a sizable link to the fairness impacts, and the top of the 2AR is quite persuasive in that effect. I think you're also doing a better job in like the fairness outweighs the things that ballot can resolve. the like fiat K is probably not true, or at least there's an answer that like learning about this is good. It teaches advocacy skills. I have this in the 1AR and 2AR. It's not conceded. I think winning framework, pretty much ends the debate for negative. You need to win framework because the app, has this tried-out warming framework. It does a thing that actually resolves something the alternative doesn't. It just rejects the 1AC, like it doesn't spill up. So framework is like a threshold issue, and I think the app is sufficiently ahead. I agree that the migration link is pretty weak from the jump, and I think the part of truancy cross is quite good. I wanted a little bit more of that in the 1AR, 2AR. I don't know, maybe it was just like not couched as like a no link, but more was like built into the framework stuff. It was there, but it felt a little different, which is why I didn't like put on like, oh, there's no link permutation. I do have some answers to the perf-con stuff. I think the 2NR is a bit quick and glibby on it, but I do think there's like something about Condo said there, testing the app, and like we kick those things, but they're still defending the app. So the perf-con stuff was an interesting route, but I thought the cleanest ballot was the framework because the app is winning a big fairness thing that outweighs kind of education offense. And like, we can still talk about racism, we can debate if something personal happens, but you can generate racism links to clean policy, clean energy policy if you wanted to, so that often see someone maybe either way fairness outweighs.
I voted more on the perm. The perm-con stuff is like my favorite answer to the security K. And I think, just like in front of me anyways, I think this needs to start in like the twin C for the neg, because just like it's always gonna be their justification for the perm. And it just like, in this debate, it felt super late breaking, so I was a little hesitant for the AF, right? Like this 2NR warrant that's like, our scenario is not unethical, etc. And then like this 2AR liberal order good thing is like, does feel quite new, right? Like it's not earlier in the debate explained as such, but like, I don't know, your argument here is new in the 2NR on that, or 2NR on this, so I'm like, justified. Yeah, so I think 2NC should start this and just be like, and the 2AC is not super clear on it. Like I thought they maybe had a little bit there, but it was more framed around the counterplans, slash like just like what their perm explanation is always gonna be. But just like enough that I think you should start it in the 2NC, rather than like sentences in the 2NR when it's just like hard to win on that, because the app will always get it late breaking. Okay, I'd maybe like a sentence from the 2AR on not new, but that was fine. And then I was just like, thought generally if the F wins the perm, even if they lose framework, but generally thought the F was ahead on framework, but didn't like look through every little bit of it. Absolutely correct, 2NR choice. Court's counterplan was like dead. I thought the 1AR could have even spent less time on this, like 20 seconds less or more, even like just like you were crushing the court's counterplan. Yeah.
Anything you good?
Is there a way to make this counterplan competitive, or what was it about it you thought it was a crush?
I think you had BCA problems. I think you have BCA problems, and this is what happened when I judged y'all's other team going for this argument. It's just like emissions happen outside of the United States. How counterplan solve, very unclear.
Yeah, the BCA and the subsidies thing, where they just like absolute crush, and then like whatever the impact is never going to be phenomenal. And just like those two, just like those plus like maybe perm shields net benefit plus like their analytic no net benefit stuff. I thought it was a crush.
I have been told that this counterplan is not competitive. I'm not sure about. I think it is.
Yeah, the counterplan, like the competitiveness was not the problem.
It just doesn't.
It just
I don't think it's
like,
If we added in, like, maybe the, like, stuff about subsidies, would that solve that, or would that make it non-competitive, or is there any downside to it?
Courts can do that.
We just have to have cards the courts can do it?
If you find cards,
Okay.
I just am very confident that you can, but
yeah.
what do I know?
Okay. That's all the questions I have.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, I don't think I have anything. Good debate, UTD, and appreciate you all.
Good debate.
I thought the 1NR was like excellent. Just by, I think the problems with the counterplan are just structural.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I think like
The effort was valiant, for sure.
it's just like the from the 1NC of not BCA and not subsidies. And like maybe you have a little bit of an angle on BCA of like, yes, we can tax international, like court internationally, but like I thought the subsidies thing was just like, you are trying to do it, they had one ACM and then read a 1AR card on no, and like,
Yeah, I personally was also probably like internally like the AI towards
oh, yeah, that too.
I think a lot of the layers, to be honest, I don't think Counterplan makes a ton of sense when.
Was it an explanation problem?
Sorry?
Was it like an explanation problem?
Not an explanation
Yeah.
problem.
No.
Yeah, maybe I looked at it too hard, but I feel pretty good. Like, there's no problem.
Thank
It's
you.
like music to the ears of a 2A.
Unplug you?
No, just your own.
Oh yeah, other thing, this like, what's it, the Strandberg card or something? There's like, the next sentence from the one you had highlighted there is like way worse for the F. Like, they don't have it highlighted, but it's like,
Wait, worse for
the
the
mood
F?
of migrants is not only desperate, but also aggressive. Those affected are well aware that they are innocent victims of the North's overconsumption. Like, I don't know, the
Oh, I
calling
didn't read that.
migrants aggressive seems much worse than the lines you had that were just like migrants. So.
That's fair.
Not highlighted obviously, but like,
Versus
it's in there, like.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Good luck, kids.
Yeah, good luck.
Thank you.